Welcome to the World Class Speaking podcast series. This is a place where you will learn how to present, persuade, and profit by improving your communication skills. Each episode in the series is a chapter from the book World Class Speaking in Action. And each chapter is written by a certified world class speaking coach. I'm your host, Matt Miller, and I've carefully crafted and summarized each chapter in the book. Have you ever wanted to raise your hand and speak up, but you just didn't? Or maybe you asked to give a speech in a short amount of time, but you didn't feel comfortable taking up that request? Or maybe you were interested in giving a presentation at work and you decided you would, but the thought of public speaking is terrifying? This episode is going to encourage you to be ready to speak instead of getting ready to speak. We always need to be prepared to give a speech at a moment's notice because there will be opportunities that are too good for us to pass up in the future simply because we aren't ready. This is episode 3, Phenomenal Action, the World Class Way, and it's given by Terry Kingston. And Terry Kingston is a certified world-class speaking coach and also a distinguished Toastmaster. What is a distinguished Toastmaster? A distinguished Toastmaster is somebody that joins the association called Toastmasters. And what Toastmasters is an association where you give speeches, typically 5 to 7 minutes, and that's the first half of the meeting. And then the second half of the meeting is improvised speeches, which are 2 to 3 minutes. And there's this whole structure throughout the whole Toastmasters meeting. Typically, it's at a library or somewhere in an office setting, and you have a panel of people, and you will get graded and given feedback on the amount of filler words you use, your am, oh, so, but, and also general feedback on how you can improve. I joined Toastmasters several months ago, and I couldn't recommend it more. It's great for somebody that wants to improve their public speaking and get over that fear as well. And if you want to join a Toastmasters club, just Google it, Toastmasters Club near me. There's tons of them throughout the state of Ohio and throughout any other state. And there's also plenty of remote options as well. But typically it's about an hour and a half meeting, and there's a structure to it. Maybe 15 to 20 people are there if you're lucky, and it's a great experience. But Terry Kingston became a distinguished Toastmaster. And I believe that is the highest ranking that you can get as a Toastmaster. You have to give 30 plus speeches. You have to be a coach. You have to mentor a club. And you also have to be, I believe, an area director. So you oversee multiple clubs. In addition to this, you have to check off all the boxes that you've completed all your speeches, I believe, in 2 separate paths. And a path could be anywhere from 18 to 20 speeches. So maybe there's 40 speeches that you have to complete. Regardless, it's a very high accomplishment and honor to be a distinguished Toastmaster. And the fastest that you could probably do it would be 2 years. And that would be a record time. Now, taking action the world-class way is super important because we need to say yes when given an opportunity to speak. We wouldn't want to pass up on a career-building presentation, maybe a best man wedding speech, or talking at a charity event. However, we need to get ready before we could be ready, which will allow us to not have to get ready in the future. I'll say that again. We initially have to get ready before we can be ready, which will allow us to not have to get ready in the future. So the question is, how can we get ready? And that's what we're going to do in this episode. Life's defining moments are the best sources to dive deep on creating stories and lessons that will help us connect with our audience. You can also think of different stories from the first time you did something, the first time that you went driving, the first time that you went to school. There's always certain firsts that make great stories. The goal of a speech is to have your audience remember the main points or the wisdom behind the message. However, if you just tell your audience the wisdom, chances are that they will forget it within 10 minutes. One way to get them to remember your points is to anchor your point with substance. An example of an anchor could be a story. Something in Toastmasters that's generally accepted is tell a story, make a point. If you can do that properly, they'll remember the point because it's anchored in the story. Now, write down a list of stories that you can pull from, and this could be life-changing events, some of your signature stories. And if you're having a hard time coming up with stories, something that you can do is pull up your phone and look through all your pictures, because a picture truly is worth 1,000 words. That's a really good thing to do. And if you open up your phone, look through your pictures, look through your videos, it's going to spark a bunch of different ideas that you could come up with speeches for. Second thing, after you audit your past, you need to have the correct mindset that your past is preparing you for your future. And what does that mean? Well, here's a quote by Zig Ziglar, and he says, every single thing that has ever happened to you in your life is preparing you for your greatest moment that is yet to come. But we have to have the proper mindset, knowing that we had these stories and these things happen in the past, but instead of looking at it with negativity or something that we regret, think about how you can use those stories to help somebody else. You can use it as a positive thing. And then after you have that mindset or that perspective change, the third one is taking action. What can you do to help prepare yourself to give a speech? How can you become comfortable? Well, something that I did is I joined Toastmasters. Something I also did is I joined National Speakers Association, which is an association all around speaking. You can also simply just watch YouTube videos, watch TED Talks, commencement speeches, presentations, just observe people on how they use certain hand gestures or how they physically move or how they tell convincing stories. But if you're able to observe different people and you adopt that growth mindset, you're going to start incorporating these practices and continue to get better. Something else you can do is you can start a podcast. And that's something that I did with this episode specifically. And I believe that if you create a podcast, it's going to help you, number one, speak to a camera, number one, tell your stories and points. But number three, and probably most importantly, is you're just going to get more comfortable speaking. And that's a critical step to actually giving a well thought out speech. What are the things that holds people back from going out and joining Toastmasters or National Speakers Association is they have this fear. Now, I love this quote by Steve Jobs when it comes to getting over fear. So listen to this. He said, remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make big decisions and choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what's truly important. And I love that quote. And that's something that you can do on a daily basis. And I know it sounds morbid, I know it sounds depressing, but everybody's going to die. Another person that talks about the subject of death a lot is Alex Hormozi, who is an influencer, New York Times bestselling author. He has a lot of credibility as well. He says, at the end of the day, if you're worried about something, just think that nobody's going to care in 3 generations. For a lot of us, we remember our parents, but how well do we know our grandparents? Maybe some of us know them pretty well. Okay, what about another generation? Our great-grandparents. I bet you a lot of us know very little about them. And then if you go another generation, I bet you we don't even know our great-great-grandparents' names. So if you put that into perspective, our kids will know a lot about us. Our grandkids will know some about us. But another generation down the line, nobody's going to even know. Nobody's going to remember what you did. Nobody's going to remember those day-to-day things that you struggled with. It's just a good mindset shift. It's a good perspective to have to think about death when you're thinking about all these big decisions that you make. Think about it. If you expand the time horizon long enough, let's say you're going to work and at work, you have a flat tire and you need to pull over and you need to call a third party company to come in and fix your tire. At the end of the day, if you were talking to somebody and they asked you how your day went, do you think you would mention the flat tire? I would argue that you probably would, because that's a unique event at a certain day that caused you a lot of pain. I would bet that you would probably mention that. Now, let's say you expand that time horizon to a week and somebody asks you, how'd your week go? Do you think you'd talk about that flat tire? I would say probably not. There might be some of us that would, but what if you expanded that to a month? I don't think you'd mention that tire. What about a year? Heck no, you're not talking about that tire. Think about in the moment when you have something that is a challenge, you're struggling with it. If you have the perspective that in a month, you're not even going to remember it or you're not going to tell anybody about it, that's a powerful tool. Expand the time horizon and you're going to give yourself a lot more peace in the moment. And another thing to get over that fear is making your why you're doing it, bigger than the fear itself. You should always have a compelling why, and that'll get you over the bad days. On page 17, in the introduction to World Class Speaking, another book by Craig Valentine and Mitch Meyerson, this book is called World Class Speaking in Action. The other book that I'm referring to is World Class Speaking. Co-author Craig Valentine proclaims that the best part of using the World Class Speaking tools is that we will touch many lives along the way. When I first read those words in 2009, I knew immediately that this is what I wanted to do as a speaker and a coach. Finding words to move people into action, creating compelling stories and speeches, and making a difference. This is the work that would be my third career, my post-retirement passion, my opportunity to earn a living doing what I love. So you think about it, if you start using these skills, getting over the fear, you're going to touch a lot of other people and inspire other people. To summarize what you guys have learned today, number one, audit your past, collect those stories, collect those experiences, and then have that proper mindset that your past is preparing you for the future. Then take action. Can you join Toastmasters? Can you join NSA? Maybe you just have more conversations at work, or maybe you give a presentation at work. Think about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis that you can incorporate a speech or a story or a conversation. Then getting over the fear, we talked a lot about death, which is a powerful tool that will help you have a perspective shift to not worry about so much of the day-to-day stuff. Then we also talked about knowing your why, because your why is going to get you through on those bad days. We must not get ready to speak, but rather stay ready to speak. We always need to be prepared to give a speech at a moment's notice. Now that you know the importance of being able to speak at any time, I encourage you to take a look at your past and write down a list of 10 stories that you can refer to. Take a look through your phone, look at your pictures, look at your videos, come up with 10. And then after you come up with these 10 stories, you're going to be able to use these to help illustrate certain points that you want to make in future presentations. Because if you have a point that you want to make and you can anchor it in that story that you have, if you mesh those two together, people are going to remember it. So list down your 10 meaningful stories from your past. And this episode wraps up part 1 of the book, World Class Speaking in Action. In part 1, we explored the fundamentals of what being a world-class speaker entails. We will move into part 2 next, World-Class Speaking Structure. And part 2 has 6 sections where we explore the structure of a speech, how to open your speech with enthusiasm, using transitions, using callbacks to connect, creating a compelling scene, and closing with impact. Those 6 things. And starting in the next episode, we will look at the best method to structure your speech for success. That's all we've got for this episode on the World Class Speaking podcast series. Until next time, remember that becoming a great communicator is so important because it leads to greater impact, influence, and income. Thank you for listening and have a great day.